That actually looks kinda cool. Hello and welcome to Stained Glass Gaming, where I turn video games into glass. Hope everyone is doing well. This video is going to be a bit different than previous videos. I'll be making the two versions of the logos from Dauntless. But I'll be flying by the seat of my pants because I'll be doing things I've never done before. These will be one piece of glass with a foil overlay. I start out by using regular scissors to cut right up to the lines. I don't need to use 3-bladed scissors because I won't be adding any other pieces of glass other than the one piece used for each logo. The logo itself is a bit complex, and I realized I can't make these as individual pieces of glass. It would cause too much frustration and will most likely break. This is the only way I can come up with to recreate the logo and still call it stained glass. I forgot to add a mark that will be the holes I drill into the glass, and I use a pen to mark them. I glue the pattern onto the glass using Elmer's glue. While I wait for the glue to dry, I use an X-Acto knife and cut out all the pieces that are numbered. These will be the foil overlay. For the foil overlay, I have a foil sheet that is copper backed from my Dark Souls video. Normally, I would like to use the same color backing for everything to keep it the same, but this is what I've got for now. Huh, that actually looks kinda cool. I tape the paper pieces onto the foil sheet and use the X-Acto knife to cut them out because the scissors can't get into some of the smaller areas. The largest overlay is number 1. I use regular scissors to get close to the paper pattern and use the X-Acto knife to get the exact shape. I need to make 2 sets because I'll only be making overlays for one side of the glass. I will at some point make an overlay on the front and back, but not in this video. I did some tests earlier to see if this would even work. I franken-foiled strips together to make a quote-unquote sheet and made the test pieces that way. I then soldered it, and this is the result. The smaller pieces worked surprisingly well. Some of them warped slightly, but not too terribly. Piece number 1, on the other hand, oh boy. Originally, it didn't look like a disaster. It looked like this, which arguably isn't a complete disaster, but I wasn't happy with it. I asked for some help online, and someone suggested I use a hot plate to melt the solder and get a nice even layer. So I did, and screwed this up really badly, which is why it looks like a complete disaster. You can clearly see the amount of franken-foiling I did to this thing, even more so when I turn it over. The black stuff is the adhesive that allows the foil to stick to the glass before it gets soldered. Some of it completely melted off, which is why you can see exposed foil. Needless to say, this one is a failure. I can still salvage the solder if I remelt it, but I did learn some useful things, which I will explain later. I used the ring saw to cut out the shape and use the grinder to smooth out the edges and refine the shape so it better matches the pattern. I use a Dremel to drill 2 small holes to be able to hang the piece once it is finished, because I'm not adding hooks the usual way. I start at a 45-ish degree angle and bring the Dremel to a vertical position. I remove the paper and clean the glass to see how it looks. I did goof a little bit with the second hole on the black version. The hole ended up being a little lower than I wanted, but I'm not redoing this piece. Copper foil is wrapped around the glass and pressed down with burnishing tools to ensure a snug fit. I saddle the areas where the foil might split, so there's no exposed glass. I want to cut out the parts that are supposed to be exposed, but leave the foil on the width of the glass because I don't want any exposed glass there. But after I taped the pieces on, I realized it'd be more work than it was worth, and that I would probably mess it up anyway. So I leave the foil as it is. I will leave the backing on and solder the overlay. I use 60/40 lead tin solder, applying flux before I solder. I can still peel the backing off after it is soldered, as long as I don't melt the adhesive too much. I solder all of the smaller overlays trying to get the same amount of solder on each overlay. When the overlay comes to a point, the foil starts to curl upward, and there isn't anything I can do about that. I'd probably make it worse if I tried to fix it. For the larger overlay piece, number 1, I apply a lot of solder and try to get a nice, even layer. I was actually able to maintain an even heat this time, and not struggle with it like I did with my test piece. This time, I'm actually happy with how both of these turned out. So much so, that I won't need to use the hot plate at all. I'll still explain what I did wrong though, when I first tried this. When I made the test piece, I used an aluminum container and it wasn't very level. So while it did melt the solder pooled near the bottom. And because I removed the backing, the adhesive melted to the container and was difficult to remove, which caused the burn marks. It probably wasn't the best idea to Franken-foil something this large. It does work for smaller pieces, but not large ones. I also need to put the overlay directly on the hot plate, but cover the hot plate with several layers of aluminum foil to protect it from the solder. I am going to be doing a foil overlay again in a future video, but it will be larger than even this one. I clean all the pieces once everything cools down and turn one set black with patina made specifically for lead. I keep the other set silver because that is as close to white as I can get. There is no such thing as white patina. There is only black and copper, since it is a chemical reaction that turns the solder a different color. The other option would be to paint the solder, but I have no idea what kind of paint I would need for lead, and I'm not good at painting at all. I peel the backing off all the overlays. Some are copper and others are black. The pieces that are black are from the Franken foiling, and the pieces that are copper are from the sheet. The adhesive is still sticky, but not enough to stick to the glass for a long period of time, which is where the superglue comes in. I superglue the overlay onto their respective logos, using pliers to help position the pieces, and a Q-tip to soak up the glue that spills out. Some of the pieces aren't fully flat, and some pieces do stick out. I tried my best to bend them to make them flatter, but I could only do so much. I have to wait 24 hours for the glue to fully set. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to find nail polish remover to unglue my fingers. The final thing I do is apply wax to slow down the natural oxidation process. I waited to apply the wax until the very end because I wasn't sure if the wax would mess with the superglue. If you want to know more, I have a tutorial playlist where I explain each step in more detail, though it doesn't include foil overlays because I'm still learning how to do them. This entire video isn't usually how I do stained glass. There's generally more glass involved, so I really had to figure out how to make this work. It was interesting to do something a bit different, and I did learn things I can use in future videos. I'm really happy with how these turned out. There were some alignment issues, mainly with the foil overlay, and not all the overlays are flush with the glass, but all in all, I'm very happy with these. I like the black on white logo a little bit more than the white on black. Like, share, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you would like to see me make down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all through the next pane.